Robert Johnson, and I am excited to bring you another episode of our ongoing series about the book Soul Feast by Marjorie Thompson. Tonight is, I think, one of my very favorite chapters, Entertaining Angels Unawares, the Spirit of Hospitality. And as we were reflecting on this chapter, I commented that I would have made this the first chapter of the book if I was the editor. The whole reason for our spiritual practices is because God has been hospitable to us through creation, through coming in the form of Jesus Christ, through the power of the Holy Spirit. And because God is hospitable, we are called to always imitate God, to be in the nature of God, and to model God. And we do that through hospitality. And I think all spiritual practices and the means of grace are a form of hospitality to God. We let our lives be open to God, open to God's shaping, open to God's uh, imprint, image. That's what we go for, to have the mind of Christ. And so I think this would have been a really fitting first chapter. I love the name of it. I love the passage in Hebrews. I remember even as a child when somebody said to not neglect hospitality because in doing so you might entertain angels unawares. And I think of that often, and I can think of many times in my life when I had contact with a stranger, and after they left, I thought, oh my God, that was Jesus in the flesh. I have had a spiritual moment. I also love further scripture that Marjorie Thompson cites is Matthew 25, which talks about when I was hungry, you gave me something to eat. You know the passage. When I was thirsty, you gave me drink. You visited me in prison. You tended to me when I was sick. You welcomed me when I was a stranger. And the response of both the sheep and the goats is, well, when did we see you? And the point is that you are to cultivate such a spirit that you welcome everyone as if they're Christ. That's the rule of St. Benedict. So that practicing hospitality is just a normal rhythm of our lives. And we don't ever have to wonder when we met Jesus because we treat every person as if we were meeting him. And I think that's the whole point of Matthew 25, which Jesus holds up as the last judgment, right? That you will be ushered into your reward if you welcomed and recognize that God is in so many different places. I am always happy to join in these conversations with Martha Stokes, lay leader. And Martha, what are you thinking tonight as we come into this conversation?
I find that I just constantly need to remind myself, especially these days, that that might be Jesus right in front of me.
Mm-hmm.
I know that's how I grew up and that's what I firmly believe, but there are those moments when just stepping back, I'm like, okay, let me check myself. That truly
Right.
could be.
And he might not be the white faced, blue eyed one in all of our stained glass
That's
windows, right?
more than
I
more than
think,
likely not
yeah,
gonna
probably
be.
a mistake if that's the only place you look. So,
Yeah. So just that constant mindfulness that I need to keep before me. That's, the, I think the true foundation of our call,
right.
that we care for one another. And in caring for one another, just want to mention that tonight we have two other participants who are planned to be with us. One was Reverend Ileana Rosario, who unfortunately is sick this evening. So we want to keep Ileana in our prayers. And then the other is Lionel Jackson from Northern Virginia, and he is traveling, so we knew he might be a little bit late. So when you see him pop in, we're just going to welcome him with open arms to the
Because this is
table in
all
this
about
conversation.
hospitality, right?
All about hospitality, and we know things happen that sometimes cause us to be our most flexible and our most creative. So we will again welcome Lionel when he steps in. But Susan Hughes, we are so glad that you are joining us as well, and look forward to the conversation. Let everybody know who you are.
Well, thank you for the warm welcome. Yeah, I'm Susan Hughes. I serve as the associate pastor at Bethlehem, which is in the Mountain View District down on the Bedford County side of Smith Mountain Lake. That's just one part of my calling. I also work at a food pantry called Lake Christian Ministries, which is just down the road, serving low-income families in a tri-county area, Franklin, Pennsylvania, and Bedford County. And I work in a program called New Tomorrows, where we work with individuals who come to the food pantry that are looking to do something different. I like to say this is the department where we want to put ourselves out of business and help people connect with resources and move forward in the ways that they wish to. So I have the opportunity there to extend a lot of hospitality, certainly. Also, I wear a hat as there is a church that closed in Franklin County, on the Franklin County side of Smith Mountain Lake, closed in 2022, and we have resurrected it as a community center, which provides resources for the local community. Everything with a very low barrier. Everything is no cost, all are welcome. We run on donations and the blessing of grant funding. So really enjoying working in the community there. And again, extending hospitality to all. So this chapter was my happy place as well. I love, love, love this work.
Thank you. And Lionel, we were just saying before Susan introduced herself that you would be popping in any moment because you were traveling. And so you came in at the most wonderful time.
Well,
So we were
thank
just
you.
doing introduction. So tell folks what church you are a part of and a little bit about you.
Okay, well, I'm running here, so enjoy the sweat because it took a while to get here. It's not rain. So who am I? So I'm Lionel Alexander Jackson, and I'm the son of two amazing parents, QB and Jacqueline Jackson, and I'm very fortunate to be a part of New Life at St. Andrews UMC. So that's who I am.
Great, great. Well, I thought we'd start tonight. And anybody watching, just want you to reflect on when you were warmly welcomed. And all of us, I think, can probably think back to our times when we were warmly welcomed. And on the flip side, think of a time when you were not. Think of a time when you felt um, neglected, when you felt ignored, when you felt, oh man, I just had a flashback. I went to a church. It was the Rage in town, another United Methodist church, and I was on vacation. So I went and I got there early, like a half hour early. And I was a little frustrated because it was like Children's Day. So the pastor wasn't even there to preach. But I sat there and I looked like all the moms in the room. And I was half an hour early and they were all around me. And I, just sat there and they had ample opportunity to say hello. And I went through an hour and a half at that church and no one ever spoke to me. And I
Wow.
thought, wow, how is this the happening place in town? Because that was the lonely to leave a church lonely is the loneliest you'll ever feel. And I can think of many times when you feel excluded or ignored or just like invisible. That's the worst, right? Can you all think of times when you were well welcomed and times when you were invisible?
Mm.
I had the honor of speaking at a church down in northern Chesterfield back in the fall. And they had just had tremendous couple of weekends where they had done a fall festival for children. It was, right earlier than Halloween, and they had done a Brunswick stew sale and other things. And everyone was so amazing. But we left with the biggest bag of goodies you could ever walk out of a church
Yeah.
with. We had, a quart of Brunswick stew. We had some water. We had some cookies. We had just anything. And I'm sure they do this for everybody. It wasn't just, me and my husband, but sure they do it for everybody because that was the welcome that received. And then on the opposite end, there was a church here in Richmond when I first started visiting. And so I was a young single woman and really felt welcomed initially when I was visiting, to the point where I went to the new member orientation thinking that was going to be my choice for home, church home. The very next Sunday, knowing that they were in a community where they were trying to strive to get young families with children and grow those ministries. I walked out of the church after the sermon and was behind one of those young families. And the pastor and spouse made such a fuss over that young family and then just let me walk right on by. And I thought, okay, how do we move from being so hospitable to prioritizing so many times who it is that we want to embrace and be welcoming? So those are two that come to mind for me.
Mm-hmm.
I remember when we moved down here to the lake, we were coming from Northern Virginia, and we were like square pegs trying to fit into a round hole in this rural community. We had kids in elementary school and a preschooler, and living at the lake, we were kind of outsiders, and a lot of the folks here were locals and resented people at the lake. We were next door to my in-laws, which was part of the draw. But there was one woman in the elementary school who was very well known in the community and very loved. She drove a school bus, and her daughter was the same age as my oldest daughter. Her second daughter was the same age as my second daughter, and then our third daughters were a year apart. But we just kind of connected with this family, and she took me under her wing. And because I was her friend, all of a sudden people would talk to me. Otherwise I was this strange person from the suburbs
Right.
who didn't know anything about being in the country. But this family embraced us and helped us become equipped, let's just say, to know the way around here in the country. And I will forever be grateful to her. And when we were church shopping, we immediately started visiting with my in-laws church, which didn't have any children. And I'm used to having all the bells and whistles and programs and, kids choirs in Northern Virginia. Let's look around and find a church that has what my kids might need. And eventually we were looking at other churches, and my kids said, "Mom, why are we going to other churches?" And I said, "Well, do you want to go to Mama and Papa's church?" And they said, "Yes." And I'm like, "But you're the only children there." And they told me, "But they know our names."
Yeah.
And I'm like, "Oh, wow, okay." And we did. So we stayed at this church that we had visited for 10 years, a couple times a year, because they knew us and they loved us and welcomed us. And so instead of looking for a place that had programming, we became the people who were the catalyst for programming.
Yeah.
And that was really fun.
Yeah.
So, does it have to be limited to a church?
No, and we're moving outside the church very quickly, Lonnie.
Awesome. So I have two, and just allow. So we were in St. Andrews before we became New Life International at St. Andrews. So it was early before church started. We were there prepping and cleaning, and this gentleman came in, and I saw him. He said hi. I said hi. We introduced ourselves, and the first thing he said was, "What can I do to help?" It's my first time seeing him, so I was sweeping, just trying to tidy things up. And another gentleman came in and asked the same thing. We said hi to each other. He was looking for Pastor John. So both of these gentlemen were looking for Pastor John. Only one asked me, though, "Hey, what can I do to help?" First time seeing. It turns out this guy came, he sat in the service, said hi. Turns out he actually came, I think, Pastor John will have to help me, but I think he came from the district office. So he was a pastor or something, but he was working up there with you, Bishop Sue, not when you were there, but some time back.
Right.
And later on, I found out that he was a pastor or something working up there. I said, wow, he never mentioned that at all.
Yeah.
He only said hi. We met as two brothers, two friends, and he wanted to help. The other guy, he did come to Bible study. So I would say that was one time I felt very welcomed, right? I was welcoming, but he was more welcoming for me because he wanted to help. I love that right off the bat, right? And then the second time, I was walking down the street to go get a train to a train station. I was going to get the bus and go to this train station. It happened to be in Japan. And this old lady saw me. She was an older lady. And when she actually could recognize me, she walked across the busy traffic, not to walk on the same side of the street as me. And so that was not a welcoming time, right? And I gave it a grace because if you understand some of the imagery there, and she was from World War II, right? So me being an American, she probably figured I was an American, right? Yeah. But so that was a time that was unwelcoming. And the other time was very welcoming, even though I just met this gentleman and we were in church and I.
Uh-oh, he froze.
Yeah.
But he froze with a happy face. I always freeze with a horrific face.
think I saw a bolt of lightning earlier
Yeah,
that
the
kind of
weather's
startled him.
bad.
So
The weather's bad
yeah.
tonight. Well, I'll jump in, and if he comes back, let him.
Can
There
you
he
hear
goes.
me?
There you are.
Well, you froze on
Yeah, so
us.
I'm sorry. Yeah, the power is gone. It's
Yeah.
thundering and lightning here. So I'll stick in as long as it'll let me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that one thing I appreciate about this chapter is that she gets around to humility and a sense of to imitate Christ, to welcome the stranger, is an orientation, right? That you are not so closed off, that you are recognizing the other, that you are engaging the other, that you are really have an attitude of openness. And I love the story of hospitality from the Middle Ages, right? That you took care of somebody so much that eventually it was called a hospital because you healed them by your hospitality. So I think that the sense of, are we aware of our neighbors? Are we aware of those around us? And are we willing to get out of our comfort zone and extend just affirmation, joy, acceptance, presence to them? We talk about incarnation all the time, but to be incarnate is to be in relationship. And God didn't phone it in, right? God didn't just send us the Bible, God came in the flesh. And that is the ultimate act of hospitality. So I was really challenged by this because, um, we can all look at our lives. I do well. I always talk to my cashier at Publix. I'm always anybody if somebody holds a door for me, if somebody, I'm just aware to be in relationship. But the hardest for me is she really challenged me with the neighborhood, right? Because I come home after crazy days and I'm willing to let my garage door shut and I'm done. And was challenged because our next door neighbors are Muslim and they came over, they come over often and offer food and offer, when they're celebrating their holidays, it is a neighborly thing and they extend themselves. And I thought, boy, I need to be a better neighbor in the physical sense and be more intentional about it. So tell me how you go about being open in the world. And I think that's something all of us can address, and any small groups doing this study together, great thing to talk about. How do you extend yourself and not have that garage door just shut and seal you off?
Mhm.
I'm always enjoying meeting new people. And when I do have a chance to meet someone, to really talk and listen to them, I try to listen first and hear what their interests are, what they're looking for. In my little bit of free time, I live really close to the Y. I play pickleball and I play tennis when I can, and we'll meet people there and I ask them what they're interested in. And honestly, one of the things I do is I'm not trying to recruit, but I love to invite people to serve with me here
Mm-hmm.
and there. I've
Great
had
opportunity. Yeah.
playing pickleball, invited a neighbor. He lives 2 doors down from me. We both walk across the street to the Y, and I said, hey, would you ever be interested in serving with me at the warming shelter? And so doing something with people. Met one tennis lady and she said she's looking for new to the area and trying to find a place to connect and where she can work with people, and she likes to tutor. And so I just love to help people find a place where they can feel belonging and community.
Mm-hmm.
And if they're interested in serving and helping others find belonging and community. So that's kind of I don't know, my kids call me an aggressive friend maker. I think it's meant to be a compliment, but never met a stranger. And so that's just something I really enjoy. And like you, meeting people that you don't know, just in transactional ways at the grocery store or whatever, I enjoy that. But when I really have time to visit with someone, there's someone who had gone to a protest in Roanoke and on a Saturday and was with us the following Sunday. I think it was April 6th. And she's like, I'm just struggling. I'm looking for I can't find my people. I'm not around here very often. And I just said, hey, welcome home. And she just burst into tears and was so excited to, find a place where she felt comfortable. So just meeting people's needs and daring to be vulnerable and take a risk. I think that's the front end of hospitality, is that, like you say, having that open door and being willing to put yourself out there.
Mhm.
You hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'll jump in. So I think hospitality and is being outward focused, right? And I'll share two experiences. One from when I was a real little lad. So I can't claim that this came from me, right? So in my family where I grew up, um, they would tell us, my grandparents in particular, and my parents just reinforced, but they would say, you owe people the time of day.
Yeah.
So that's
good.
all I knew, right? You
Mhm.
just owe people the time of day. And I think they were trying to help me in their way to be humble, right? Secondly, if I owe it to them, right, I have to see them to pay them, right?
Mm.
And so those are two things. So there was a time in my life when I was extremely intense. People may say I'm still am, but I was like really, really intense. And this guy told me, he said, later on we became friends. And he said, you were so intense. You looked so mean. I didn't want to even say hi to you. So I remembered that. And years later, I was preparing to deploy with a battle group. And it was dark like it is now. It was rainy. And I actually went to what I thought was my home, where I was supposed to be. And it was the next place over.
Mm.
I walked in and normally there wasn't a sentry there. And I'm like, this my sis knew they just started this. So I took a left and to then go down that hall and take a right and go all the way into my room. And there was some police tape there, right? And I got to the room and it turned out it was like the Three Bears. You won't believe it, but it was like that. It was the wrong building because somebody was sleeping in my bed. So I'm not going to go with that story, right?
Wow.
So when I walked back out to the sentry, I realized I'm in the wrong building. I asked what happened. And the lady shared with me that the person in that room committed suicide.
Oh.
And I said to myself, just thinking broadly, what if one person, just one person, would have said hi to that person in their journey up to that point? Then I think it would have changed the directory. One person would have noticed him, and it took me back to when I was a little boy. So from then, it reminded me to be intentional about just saying hi, not wanting anything back, but thinking about if you just say hi, you may help add some joy to that person's journey in their life just by saying hi and noticing them. So that's just my little story about how I try to be intentional, not based on me, but based on what I was given as a little boy and that one incident about that person who decided to commit suicide.
You all have reminded me, Susan, I grew up with a mother too who made friends with everybody, could start a conversation with anybody on the street. And I will admit that as a teenager, especially a young teenager, that embarrassed me greatly at times, because no matter where we were, she could strike up this conversation. I'm like, Mom, what are you doing? But now I can still go places across Virginia. And, my mother would have been 100 years old this December. I can still find people in lots of places who, when they hear my name, will say, didn't your mother work at the hospital? Didn't your mother do so and so? And I'm like, yeah. But Lionel, kind of connecting to your story, I had a really dear friend from high school who, when we were in our early 20s, decided that he could not handle life anymore and decided to try to take his life by suicide. I was at VCU here in Richmond getting my master's degree in social work and mental health counseling, and got a call from his sister saying, he's not talking to any of us. Would you come? And it was in Greensboro, North Carolina. Said, would you come? We think he'll talk to you. And I remember saying immediately, yes, I'll get in the car. I'll come right now. But then I called my mother and I said, I have no idea what I'm supposed to say in this situation. I said, and here I am getting a graduate degree and trying to help people through mental health concerns. And I had no earthly idea what to say when I walk in the door. Never been in a psychiatric ward at that time. So picked up my mother on the way because I could take a little detour and get her. And the whole time between Martinsville and Greensboro, which is about 45 miles, all she said to me was, just be there.
Mhm.
Just be there. Don't worry about what you're going to say. Just be there. And we have somebody who put in the chat that sometimes it's the presence that's
Yeah.
the welcome and the hospitality, not the words. And so you all made me remember both of those connections for this wonderful opportunity to grow up with a mother who could make friends with anybody, but then also had such wisdom to say, just be.
Yeah. And I think that 99% of the pastoral situations I've found in, the value has been in the presence. That's incarnation. That's not, there aren't any magic words, and words will never make a lot of things right, but that's the key. Now I'm going to we've talked about what I call easy hospitality. Let's talk about hard hospitality. Um, Cross-racial, cross-ethnic, cross huge boundaries, cross political lines. Ooh, that's tougher these days, is it not? That maybe just because somebody else is made in the image of God, I have to hang with them and hear them out and listen to them. And I love how Marjorie Thompson points out, how are we ever going to grow or change or consider our own perspective better if we don't? Now, I will put in a plug for civil engagement, right? I think that the horror of our times is the cruelty and the mocking and the painting with I know exactly who you are just because of the label I slap on you. But I know for years when we'd work on uh, uh, every church I've been in, we wanted to welcome persons of color, and we really didn't think we'd achieved any kind of hospitality unless we were having dinner with them, right? That to just have people in the same room with you, to just have, it does not mean hospitality. And so how do we as a church move outward, move into communities that might challenge us, move into be with people who we aren't comfortable with? How do we do that? Because our call is not to like join up with people who look like us and are like-minded, right? That Christ, as we mentioned earlier, Christ was always dragging those poor disciples outside their comfort zones to people who they never would have talked to. That's the gospel, one after another. There's not one person that Jesus goes out to who was part of comfortable society. So how do we deal with that kind of hospitality? That's a whole different realm. That really is godly hospitality.
I think the challenge you're referring to, so often in a church, we want to serve in ways that are transactional. Hey, I volunteer at the food pantry, or I do this, I'm packing food, but you're not really connecting face to face in relationship with people. So finding places where you can volunteer or serve where you're actually, I don't want to say forced, it's more like you have the opportunity to meet someone and then get curious. Just realize that the person that is other than you is the person who knows the most about their life and their experiences because
Right.
they are their own. So I have nothing to say other than to listen. I really I would say learned the most about white privilege from a man that I was teaching and getting a head class in my first appointment. And he needed a ride home. He didn't have transportation. This was a black man that had trouble with substance abuse, and I was giving him a ride home. So he was embarrassed about where he lived. He said, just drop me off here at this church. I can walk through the woods to my place. And I'm like, I don't mind. He goes, no, it's fine. Just drop me off here. And so I would drop him off. And then one night it was raining. And I'm like, I'm not dropping you off. Come on, we'll drive. And I'd drive him into his neighborhood, was called The Trap. It was a mobile home neighborhood. And I'd drive him, and some nights we'd sit there and we'd sit in the car and talk for an hour, and he would just shared his life with me and shared experiences. We would stop at Sheetz. You'd get a pack of cigarettes or soda or something on the way home, And one night he's like, come on, we got to get out of here quick. I'm like, I don't understand what. He goes, well, there's officer so-and-so and he knows me. And I'm
Mm,
like, well, we're not doing anything. And he goes, well, he'll find something.
mm,
And so he just opened my eyes to a whole world that I had no knowledge of, that I didn't understand, and helped me grow in my understanding and empathy, and um, recognize my privilege in a way that I think fueled me to want to do something about it.
mhm,
Not just to sit in my privilege, but to use it to make a difference, and to hopefully work for change that open the eyes of others. So it's really about getting curious, and it takes courage to be vulnerable and to open yourself up to someone whose experiences are different. It can be scary. I'm sure my world is scary to others who aren't comfortable with the things that I'm used to. But oh my gosh, what an amazing, life-changing experience. And then I had not had contact with him for a couple of years. I moved to another church, and he, out of the blue, rang me up on Facebook Messenger. He didn't really have a phone, but or minutes. So he called me. Then he said, I just needed to talk to you. I'm going away for a while, and I wanted to say goodbye. And we continue to reconnect every couple of years. There's about 2 years ago. After that he reconnected and took getting ahead again at this new church. And anyway, so I've just been blessed by people who I've been able to stay in contact with that have vastly different lives and experiences than I have.
mhm.
That's the best teaching in the world, and I have just been blessed and grown through that. It's definitely a experiencing Christ,
Mhm.
and it was a mutual thing. It was, we helped each other and learned from each other. It was just wonderful.
Mm. Thoughts on how we do hard hospitality?
I I I think one way we do hard hospitality is to be intentional.
Mm,
Is to be intentional.
mhm,
The Bible talks about I give you a new, and our minds have to be reformed, but being intentional, right? So again, I go back to what I shared. I believe hospitality is outward thinking, outward seeing, and when we're intentional about just the simple thing of saying hi and
mhm.
seeing where the hi takes us. Um, to build trust, it's not instantaneous. Is that right? It's something that's earned.
Right.
The sister that was just talking about talked about a period of time. I don't know if that was a week. I don't know if that was 2 weeks, a month. I don't know how long it was, but I would imagine it didn't happen in one setting. So she was intentional about being hospitable to this gentleman, right? In our country, we pinned it. The early founder said um, uh, that we're all created, right?
Mhm,
And that we're all endowed by that same creator.
mhm.
So when we have that intentionality, right, and I think about just Jesus himself, here he is, the Son of the Most High, but he was able to humble himself, being intentional, not about himself, not seeing anything about him, but seeing what his father needed to have done in his mission. So he intentionally left glory, which I can't imagine. You all may get it. I'm still trying to get myself wrapped around this. He
Right.
left glory to come here. And not just to come here, but have people spit on him, have people do all these things. And ultimately, to stay committed, intentionality, and be separated from the thing he loved the most
Mm,
was his father.
mhm.
So, in that sense, as we grow as disciples, maybe not in the beginning, but as we tend to grow, just like the apostles did, they had a lot of negative, hard stuff thrown at them, but they stayed locked into his mission and
Mhm.
maybe also learn to do the same. So those are my thoughts on how we do it. Being
Yeah.
intentional, keeping it simple, and
Mhm.
allowing the simple and the Holy Spirit to grow that into whatever. My thoughts.
Yeah.
Mm. Yeah.
There's a
Agreed.
statement.
Go
I'm sorry,
ahead,
go ahead,
Martha.
Susan. No, I was gonna say, there's a statement toward the end of this chapter that always stands out to me every time I read this. And it's Marjorie Thompson making the point that our hospitality is rooted and grounded in God's hospitality to us in Christ. And until we have that foundation, until we truly know what that love is like deep within our core, then we're not willing to trust. We're not willing to have the courage. We're not willing to take the risk to put ourselves out there in the level of hospitality that God calls us to.
Well, in the sense of I need to be with others unlike me, because that's the only way I can fully appreciate all of God's creation, right? I'm trying to think who said this. I think Joan Chittister, I've mentioned her before, Sister Joan Chittister, but she said, if we truly believe that Christ is in everyone, then to have the mind of Christ means that I have to experience Christ in many different people, because I don't have a corner on the mind of Christ, right? So that I have a hunger to know how other people live, how other people love, how other people relate. And I think that's just been, I think how bereft my life would be without these experiences. Last week I was in heaven. I mean, I got to sit down with all the newly elected African bishops, and their worlds are just so different from mine, but I need to know them, and I need to know how Jesus plays in their communities. And it was just one of these um, hungering. And I think I told you earlier, I had a seminary professor who was a Presbyterian, and we had a group of seminary students, and we met weekly, and we were very close knit, and we were always planning our meals. And Dr. Hunter's like, why do you Methodists always focus on food? And I said, oh goodness, that's theological, right? I mean, in Isaiah, the image of the kingdom of heaven is the table, the banquet table, and Jesus at the Last Supper, and that he celebrates communion and invites to his table people. That's at the heart of theology, right? And the image of the final days, and the coming of God in person at the banquet, right? We say in our communion ritual that when Christ comes in final victory, and we feast at his heavenly banquet, and we're told in scripture it's a banquet of all nations and races, and that's the vision that our churches need to move into, right? That we represent God better when our tables are varied. And so I guess my challenge to everybody listening is, who's at your table, and how do you expand it, and how is your church expanding its table? Not out of a sense we need to help people, but because we need to know them to know God better, right? That this is a mutual relationship, and to realize that until everybody's living into their greatest gifts, that's why I'm big into asset-based community development. What do folks in this community have that's not being fully expressed that we need to make better life for everybody? So I think this is hugely theological. And Marjorie Thompson points out, this isn't social action. This is doing the work of God, right? God calls us to stand by and stand with, and to really get to know and engage, and to be formed by that. So, I realized a long time ago, if I think that, Lakeland, Florida is the center of the universe, and I only read what's in our library and only talk to people here, I'm going to live a pretty limited life. And so how do I know God better through all of God's creation? And I think that's important. So how are we extending our tables?
I appreciate what you're sharing about sharing our assets in the community, and looking in this chat comment by Linda Moore talking about her African American congregation in a neighborhood that's predominantly Caucasian, and people are walking their dogs. And just wanted to share something that we did at this closed church that's now a community center. kaleidoscope. We live in a rural community. There are no places for people to go walk their dogs. They can, run in their own little space if it's safe and not on a busy road. But this very small church that closed had a little chain link fenced off area with a giant oak tree in the middle. And I think when at first the conference or the district thought they were going to sell the church before we shifted gears, and everything was sold. I think there might have been some playground equipment in there for kids, but everything's gone. It's just a big space that's with this chain link fence. And so I decided, hey, how about a dog park? Someone said there's no place for our dogs to go. So I bought some doggy waste bags and a little sign. You get it online, and I put in 2 benches.
Nice.
And I'm telling you, I have so many people that they drive from 30 minutes to come to the dog park because there are no places, and people are meeting each other. And I mean, there's no agenda. Just
Yeah.
come, and dogs are getting to know each other. It's hysterical. I hear all these stories. And I actually got a Christmas card from the dog this year with a donation. I was very excited. So I saved it. I haven't written a thank you to the dog. I wrote a thank you to, I'm guessing, the dog's parents. But anyway, so you never know what you have that can benefit your community if you just check it out. So Linda, I don't know if there's a tidbit there for you, a biscuit or so, but maybe that would be helpful if you have space at your church. But again, it's hospitality is figuring out what the need is, and then trying to meet that need with what you have, with your gifts or whatever assets you have. Yeah, with no agenda other than meeting a need and serving someone.
Mhm.
There was a story in one of the small little books that came out right after COVID hit about sense of urgency with getting to know the community and doing things, utilizing space in the church that it just really struck me. And I thought, how simple to think of that. But it was a church with lots of empty rooms. And they recognized that the need in the community was for laundry services. Not a lot of commercial laundry places to go to. And that single mothers needed a place where they would know their children could be cared for at the same time. So the church took one of those empty rooms, created a place just for some washers and dryers that they opened up to the community, and then offered sort of respite for the moms. Had volunteers that came in and just did some crafts and games with the children. And I thought, gosh, that's just such to me, a simple way of recognizing the need in the community right around the church and doing something about it.
Mhm.
So Susan, thank you for the dog park story too, but that story of the washers and dryers have always stood out to me.
And Susan, thank you so much. I bet those dogs love knowing they had a consistent place to come to, right? Because they mark your territory so they know, oh, I'm coming back to my place. That was great, and it's great for people to connect. So where we are at St. Andrews, at least, we're in I would call it an affluent place, and there are many churches around there. And our church, we actually have several churches that worship there. And I love saying hi to the people because they walk by with their dogs to go walk or run and so forth and so on. And I remember this one guy in particular. We hadn't opened up the new church yet, but he had been there for 30 something years. And I've been saying hi to him, and I asked him, hey, would you like to come in and see? Because his house was right next to the place. So he brought his dog in with him, and I gave him a tour. And since that time, I think he and Pastor John have connected because he's there much more than me, right? But the need to me there is they had because the church's fellowship from 2 a.m. to, we'll call it 2 a.m. the next day. So they're used to seeing a lot of busy things in a neighborhood. So I think sometimes people get the wrong impression about churches, not necessarily from church people, but sometimes it's from church people, but more so maybe outside what they form in their mind. So it's kind of good. The need there, I thought, was, again, to say hi and just do your best to invite people in. So that guy's need was he needed to know we weren't worshiping devils or things like that, because he actually said that. I thought you guys were worshiping bad things. No, we're like you. We're just normal people. And from that point to today, I think that guy smiles now, at least. I don't know if he came back into the church again, but at least he knows we're okay people and we can say hi.
I think as I think about it, I think American culture has lost a lot of its hospitality. Even from my childhood. I'm thinking
Yes.
of where I've seen hospitality, and my mind immediately goes in England, some of the pubs, when you go, if it's crowded, you don't get your own table, you just sit down. And some of the best conversations I've had from people all over the world have been in those settings. I think
Mm.
of in Italy, little cafes where somebody will just say, "Hey, pull up a chair, come join us." Or I'm one thing that Marjorie Thompson said that really resonated with me is how often people with nothing are the most hospitable.
Yes.
I have
Yes.
been offered in some of the poorest parts of the world. I know, there's not enough food for a family, but they put up a spread, and
Mm.
it's humbling, and I marvel at it. But I also think of some of the poorest places I've been, and they always have tables of people in the evening enjoying each other and playing dominoes and playing cards, and we don't do that, right? We don't even listen to the same music. It just every time I'm on an airplane now, I'm amazed how silent it is. People don't strike up conversation on airplanes. They all put in their earbuds and do their own thing, or watch whatever show they want to watch. No, we don't even watch the same shows anymore. So
Mm.
how do we develop places to gather? And I love, I think the real civilized countries of the world, like Denmark, I know Denmark does this, where people are always the most happy. In Denmark, if you have a small group or you want to get people together, the government will give you money to do that because it's benefits us to share life. And I think we're getting out of the business of sharing life. And what would God say about that, right? Created
Mm.
us to be together, I think. So it's a challenge.
Mm.
Lionel, I have to tell you, before we got on this call, I had a cup of tea. And in one of our
Awesome.
earlier conversations, you talked about, and especially all the places you have traveled in your job, how just sitting sometimes with a cup of tea with
Mhm.
a stranger is what brings you together to build those relationships. So I thought about you as I was drinking my ginger tea before we got on.
Oh, I love it. I love ginger tea. Yeah, I think it's amazing, as our sister just talked about people outside of the US are very hospitable.
Mm.
The- I mean, in little villages, the culture is they're going to bring you some water. They're going to bring you something, right? Something. And I remember it's here in the United States. So I don't know if you've ever been on the Eastern Shore of Virginia, but I was an instructor at the time, and me and my colleague, he was telling me this story about him. And he says, I'm driving down the road, and there's a people sitting on the porch and they wave at me. They were waving, and he was from New Jersey. That's important to know. So he said he was looking around trying to figure out who they were waving at because he didn't know them, right? And then he said people would pass him in the cars, and they had a thing over there where they would put a finger up above the steering wheel. And he was like, what's going on? So I had the biggest laugh, right? About him being from New Jersey, very close. People don't trust each other. They're very fast. And over there, life was slower. Most of them, some of those places, when I was living there, they didn't even have indoor plumbing. Most of them had to go to the outhouse, right? Outside their house. But to what you were saying, it was a simple place, simple farming place, but people were very kind to each other. And
Yeah.
it didn't matter. It was anybody. It was just anybody who passed. So yes, it's good to be hospitable. It's good to be hospitable. And tea does help, right? It calms us all down when we have that tea. So it's good
Yeah.
stuff.
I know that whenever we've moved, and we're United Methodist, so we've moved a lot, but what I mourn when we move are not the people who we've grown close to, who we know all the time, but it's my community, right? The people I was reflecting on, there was a woman when I was miserable practicing law, and her name was Lynn, and she worked in the Circle K where I went in and got coffee every day. And no lie, there are some days that I got up just to go see Lynn because she
Mm,
was the bright spot in my day. And
yes.
she shared about her kids and her grandkids. She talked about her life. We came from very different worlds, but I knew I'd probably never see, I never saw her again. It's the people who work, the servers in the places I go, or the coffee shop people, or the people who work in the office, um, in all many different jobs. But that's to me the richness of life is to, we have shared life, we have shared our concerns. They have prayed for me, I have prayed for them. But it's
Mm,
how open are you to not let anybody be invisible. I
mm,
tell you, I go out of my way always to be in conversation with folks who clean hotel rooms. I think that's the worst job in the world. And I
mm,
know that there are Nobel laureates who we are not educating and not helping, cleaning hotel rooms. And they don't have any other way to improve themselves. They don't have a way to get an education. They have children who need childcare. Some of them are probably undocumented. And boy, the invisible people of the world, I think God calls us. I know Jesus would totally no, he always did, right? Who touched my
mhm.
cloak? Who somebody
Yep.
touched me? Who did that, right? So how do we do that? Because it's interesting in Timothy Snyder's book on tyranny. He says one of the best ways to preserve democracy is to know the people on the train platform with you, or know these people, because I loved it. The folk, somebody, some of the folks who've been arrested who really are here legally, they haven't been sent off because their neighborhood rose up and people knew them and knew. So who are we standing up for, and who are we watching out for, and who do we know who's normally invisible? And it's really hard to paint people with to broad brush paint. Gosh, I think the biggest travesty is painting all undocumented people as criminals, right? If you've known and talked to them, if you share life with them, if you shared a table with them, you may not agree that they should stay in the country, but you certainly won't treat them cruelly. And you certainly won't
Mm,
sit around while your government treats them cruelly. So that's, I think, essential for democracy, essential for the kingdom of heaven, essential for just human beings to function together in this world. And I think that's in danger and in jeopardy now. And so, how do we speak out on behalf of folks who are invisible, or who are not watched out for, or who are just not given a voice? I think that's really Christ-like work, and
mm.
it's a challenge.
So, I love that we're in a time of grace.
Mm,
And I also like that, sharing the good news, right?
hmm
And I wrote this down earlier. So on the way here, I met this guy in the Sheets getting gas, and he was behind the counter, and we said hi to each other. And said, so how you doing? I said, how you doing? He said, oh, I'm doing great. I have the love of Jesus in my heart. That's what he said,
Yeah,
just like that.
yeah.
And he said something else behind. I said, oh, really? So I stopped, right? And I said, well, are you married? He said, oh, no, 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 I'm 16, right? He's a very tall, big guy, right? I said, oh, wonderful. I said, well, good. Let me pray with you. So I did. And I prayed for his wife. I prayed for his children's children's children. And I prayed for him too. Uh, when someone at 16 remembers his anchor,
hmm
and he's a young man, right? I said, oh, I have to stop and pray for him. So I could see his name, right? And I said his name. I didn't tell him my name though.
hmm
And as I was leaving, he said, "Can I shake your hand?"
hmm
Two men, a young man and an old man, right? But I just wanted to honor not him, but the Christ in him and the people that poured in him, that he was strong enough to say, I have the love of Jesus in me. And my thinking, right, as we grow stronger in that, just like the first community, right, because they were called Christians not by themselves, right? They were called Christians by the people that observed how they worked together, right? How they stayed committed to what Christ was doing because they were duplicating him. And I believe as we do that, those dark things that we're talking about, the light just gets so strong, the dark things tend to go away, because when there's light, darkness has to flee. So back to that young man, it was so great. And for me, right, the work only gets hard when the vision gets blurry. So for me, that was Christ's vision at the time, and he just gave me an opportunity. Somebody already planted. I was just there watering, and God, of course, got the increase. So I think as we learn to do those things with people, God's things he gave us will get stronger. And someone said in the chat something very important. They talked about being welcoming and hospitable. I can't see it. Oh, hospitality. No, yeah, hospitality is totally different than being welcoming, right? I thought that was very good to what you were saying as well.
I appreciate opportunities to have time to sit with people who are different and to get to know them. A friend shared with me she was taking a class that's been offered to the community and met people that she never would have met before. This was something Carilion Clinic offered, and she goes, Susan, I'm guessing that by the way that they spoke and dressed and talked, they probably voted different from me. And so before meeting them, I would immediately want to write them off. But after sitting down and being part of a class and we talked, she goes, they're just such nice people and they have a generous spirit about them. And I know that now that I have begun a relationship, I can't hate them. And I'm like, wow, this is huge. Relationships change the world one person at a time. We will change the world one person at a time by daring to be vulnerable, to share our whole heart with someone else. And, maybe they'll share theirs in return, maybe they won't. But that's the gift of hospitality. And when someone shares their heart with you, to receive it and to not deny them or look down or look away or but to receive their experience in the wholeness of who they are. And that's really that I agree, Lonell, that difference. And I see Carl's the one who wrote that hospitality is not just welcoming, but accepting someone exactly as they are, without any expectations, without wanting someone to assimilate to whatever community or thing you are a part of, but to just love people where they are. My daughter, I tell you, I love this phrase. It's become my personal mantra. She shares it with her kids every night before they go to bed. She says, you are loved, you are not alone, and we are in this together. And I think that is our calling, to share that with the world. That is being incarnational and hospitable.
I was just going to say, as you were finishing up, Susan, that truly is our calling for all of us as Christians to live that authentically, that, wholeheartedly into the hospitality that God's given us and that we're now to offer to others.
I ditto, 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 and Susan, ditto, 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 ditto. Please share with your daughter, and and if you don't mind, I'm going to connect it back to what I was saying in Acts. I think what drew people in the early church was not what people said. It was what they did. Because when you learn about the Jewish culture, it's very strong. It has lots of tradition, right? And it's very closed. It's just like, it's very close. Those women are like on it, about marriage, about getting those babies in here, but getting married to another Jewish man. They're on it. There's no room for doubt, right? It's black and white. So when they decided to go and accept Christ's journey, right? They were ostracized. They weren't part of the family anymore. And they decided to create community together. The haves and the people that may not had as much, but and they made sure that they knew each other. They broke bread together, they fellowshiped together, they also shared the word together, and they saw each other and they saw the need. No one, it seemed to me, nobody took advantage of somebody, right?
Right.
But if they needed, right, they made sure that no one went without. And the reason why I share that is as we learn to do what you said, Susan, what was those three things your daughter said?
You're loved, you're not alone, we're in this together.
Uh-huh. So we're loved by Christ, and through that love, we share community with each other, right? We're not alone because we can see each other, we help each other, and we're in the journey together. And I think when we do those three things, it draws people. It draws lonely. Hey, those people are having a good time over there. They're locked in, and they can see, oh, wait a minute. That's a Spanish person, or at least they look Spanish. Oh, that's a, I mean, they can see, you can see. I want to know what's going on over there. And people come. I love one of the community outreaches that we do recently. So we do an annual event once a year. And it's just a cookout. That's all it is, but it's open to the community. And this couple came and I said hi to the couple. There was a man, a woman, a little baby. And they had a great time. I saw them when they came. I said hi. They went off and they did all the Easter egg stuff. It was so amazing. But before they left, this guy came and says, hey, can I take a picture with you? I was ecstatic. I was like, you want to take a picture with me? He said, yeah, I want to. And so they took, and I said, well, his wife came, and I love kids. So forgive me. I absolutely love kids. I lose myself sometime around kids. So all of us are in the picture. And they said, we're from Peru, right? And I just thought about that. I don't know if we'll see them until next year, right? And maybe they'll come, because I'm sure someone's going to follow up. But I just thought about what you talked about here about being hospitable, right? So back to his church, right? I love this piece that you guys are talking about. This lady who wrote these, and I was reading through those things, and she was connecting the Bible and places around the world, and maybe we may have gotten away, but I'm glad you have these series, and you're talking about hospitality and being hospitable for us, the disciples of today, wherever we may be, to be more hospitable to each other in particular. And I think that draws other people as we walk in our culture. Thank you, Susan, for those three to your daughter.
Yeah, that's helpful. And I would challenge everybody listening, if you really want God to mess with you, pray the prayer, open my eyes to who needs welcoming today. And I guarantee God will show you. And the only time I felt in my life when I don't listen to those nudges, when I don't speak to somebody, that's when I feel the prick of, oh, I should have listened to that direction. This is our next to last time. Our last one will be in June, first Monday in June. I, however, will not be with you. I will be with my covenant group. When we talked about spiritual friends and spiritual direction, we will be gathering in Florida, and then I will be preaching the ordination service at the Florida Annual Conference with Bishop Tom Berlin. So I'm looking forward to that. And then the week after that is our own annual conference. And the week after that, I'll go to Western North Carolina's annual conference to do the Bible study. So I've got a full June. But I am leaving it in Martha and the panel's hands. The last one, I hope you'll make sure to tune into. And I also hope you will encourage groups to do this series. We'll have all 12 in one place where you could start Soul Feast and do it with a group. I hope you will do that. And the last thing we'll talk about is the rule of life. Which of these practices have worked well for you? I know that I am big into examination of conscience and consciousness, that I am big into reading scripture and Lectio Divina. I am big into prayer and meditation. And during Lent, I fast in some way from something, right? but figure out what connects you to God, what is life-giving to you, and be thinking about your rule of life as you read the last chapter in Soul Feast. And I am looking forward um, to this spreading. I hope more and more people will pick up. I think this is the heart of who we are, and it's this groundwork. And she talks about this in the rule of rule of life, that this is discipline, and the deeper you want to be, every week you need to do that. So I will leave you. It's been great. And I hand it over to Martha for the June time. And I wish you all blessedness in the weeks to come. I hope I see many of you at annual conference in Roanoke. And blessings on you as you continue to figure out your rule of life as we finish with Soul Feast. Thanks for joining us tonight. Bye-bye. Thank you all too. Lonell, Susan, Martha, see you later. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much. Shalom. Thank you. Shalom, shalom.